We're eager to talk with you about anything that is important to you. But all day today, we will be shining a spotlight on who you really are. You think sometimes that the negative emotion that you feel is because you're looking at a condition or a circumstance that isn't pleasing. Someone said, my lover left and I am sad. And we said, no, you're not. And she said, my lover left and now I'm sad. And we said, no, you're not. Abraham, what's wrong with you? Can't you hear? My lover left and now I'm sad. And we said, no, you're not. She said, all right. I wasn't sad. My lover left. Now I'm sad. I'm sad because my lover left. And we said, we know that's how it seems. But you're sad because you're focused upon the absence of a lover, when in your vibrational reality is the presence of a lover. And what you want is the presence of a lover. And when you focus upon the absence of a lover, you tear yourself apart. And that's why you feel this negative emotion. You are assigning this sadness to someone else's behavior. We are assigning this sadness to your behavior. We are assigning this sadness to your inability to focus inside the vortex. That's hard to hear. Esther doesn't even want to hear that. Please give me just a little bit of, can't the universe just make me the one exception just this one time? Can't I focus upon the absence of what I want without it being my fault? Can't it be the fault of the person who is displaying the behavior that I'm focused upon? We say, well, that's conditional love if we've ever heard it. Now what are you going to do? Try to control the world so that you can feel better? Oh yeah, that is what you try to do, isn't it? That is what you try to do, but it isn't working out, have you noticed? You have a war on drugs and a war on terrorism and a war on cancer and a war on teenage pregnancy and a war on, and they're all getting bigger because when you push against unwanted things, you hold yourself outside the vortex where the solution is. And this is the most important thing that we want you to hear. Oh, hear this. We'll say it again and again until you get it. When your life and what you're sifting through the contrast helps a problem to come into focus, the whole time that problem is coming into focus outside the vortex for you, oh, you're going to love it. The solution is coming into focus inside the vortex. Thought for thought, point for point. Little problem, little solution. Bigger problem, bigger solution. Boom, 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 boom. We're not kidding you. In every moment that through life, you, blessed beings that you are, have carved out and defined with great detail the problem, without even knowing it, you've been carving out with great detail the solution. You just haven't known it because while you're beating the drum of the problem, you don't have access to the solution. But it doesn't mean it isn't there, and it doesn't mean we don't have access to it, and it doesn't mean you can't too if you'll come over here where we are. Don't you like that? So, the other day something's going on. Esther's feeling uncomfortable about it. She said, hey, the good news is we're creating something really wonderful over there where we can't see it. But it's good to know. Isn't it good to know? If we can convince you in this short time that we're together today about the existence of this vibrational reality, if you leave here accepting the reality of this vibrational reality, and then we're able to show you how you can focus yourself there regardless of what's going on over here in your reality, you will find relief immediately. A woman said, I cannot pay my mortgage and I don't know what to do. And we wanted to bring her into the vortex. We wanted her to think hopeful thoughts. She was really stubborn. She didn't want to really do that. She wanted to face reality. But once we were able to convince her that she can't, in this moment, while we're having a conversation with her, she can't produce out of thin air the money to pay her mortgage. It had gone far out of whack. She was not going to manifest those dollars that day, in that moment, in the hour that we spent in conversation. She was not going to manifest those dollars. So she could not change reality. And if her emotion depended upon her reality changing, then she was in for a long, hard winter. But if we could convince her that her emotions don't have to be dependent upon what manifests in this moment, when we were able to convince her that she could go into the vortex where relief is now, She can find relief now. She can't find the money this red hot minute, but she can find relief now, this red hot minute. She can find relief. She can go to the vortex. She can find relief. And once we were able to suck her in with our very clever, law-based knowledge, in her absence of resistance, the money came that week. When you release resistance, you release the only thing that is holding you apart from what you want. The difference is, so many humans aren't willing to release resistance until the help comes. They say, I want to be over there. And we say, what's over there? And they say, I don't know, I'm over here. We say, well, what would it be like over there? I don't know, I'm over here. Well, try to think about what it's like over there. I can't. I'm so unhappy about what's over here. We say, well, if you could just think about what's over there, you could shift the way you feel. And then vibrationally speaking, you'll be over there, and then everything else will follow. Now, bring it to me while I'm over here, and then I'll go over there. That's sort of what most people say. Show it to me. Show me the money. Show it to me, and then I will have an emotional response to what is. And we say, that really is the opposite of what the art of allowing is. The art of allowing is finding a way of allowing alignment regardless of what's going on in reality. It's also what unconditional love is. I'm going to find alignment with the love that is me, regardless of the condition that's going on. I'm going to discover unconditional love. I'm going to discover unconditional alignment. I'm going to discover unconditional releasing of resistance. I'm just going to let it go because it doesn't feel good. I'm going to let it go because it doesn't feel good. But you know, we've never seen anyone that could let something go without finding something else. When you say, I'm not going to think about that thing that I'm thinking about anymore, you're thinking about that thing that you're not going to think about anymore. And then you say to your friend, help me not think about this. About what? About that. I don't want to think about that anymore. Why don't you want to think about that? Because it doesn't feel good when I think about it. Well, what's wrong with thinking about it? Well, it just doesn't feel good. And when I think about that, it keeps me from what I want. Well, then you shouldn't think about that. I know I'm trying not to think about that, but I'm thinking about that. I wish I didn't think about that. If that thing wasn't so big. You know, that thing's been there for so long. Have I told you how long that's been there? That's been dogging me for as long as I can remember. And the more you talk about what you're not going to think about, the bigger it gets, and the more you use it as your excuse not to go into the vortex. Where if instead of not thinking about that thing you're not going to think about, which just causes you to think about that thing that you're not going to think about, you would try to think about something else. So then you say, okay, then I'll think about that. But that, way over there, is too far vibrationally apart. In other words, you've trained yourself over here. This is what's easy to think about because this is what's active in your vibration. So we want you to be nice to yourselves when you say, I'm thinking about this, but I'm not thinking about it as much. And I can't think about that because I've trained myself to think about this. What you want to do is think about this a little closer to what you really want. Think about this. In other words, move incrementally. Just reach for the best feeling thought that you can find from where you are until you train yourself into the vicinity of your vortex. This vortex of creation, do you accept its reality? Doesn't matter if you do or not, it is reality. The larger part of you is there, even in your ignorance of it. There it is with everything you want. And this vortex, this edge of the vortex is somewhere on the emotional scale between hope and belief. That's where it is. So if you're over here in fear, you're nowhere near the vortex. And even though the vortex is calling you, it's pulling you forward. When you go from despair and the vortex gets hold of you a little bit and pulls you forward, you end up in revenge. And you say, oh, that doesn't feel very vortex-like. We say, yes, it does. It's closer. It's closer to the vortex than you were. When you allow yourself to move from revenge into hatred and hatred into anger and anger into less anger, into frustration, into overwhelmment, when you get in the vicinity of hope, now the vortex will take you right in and show you something to make a believer out of you. In other words, when you allow yourself to get into the vicinity of the vortex will help you to believe. So what we really want to talk about in this gathering, because most of you are not over there in despair. Most of you hang around with the low end of your vibration somewhere in the vicinity of overwhelmment. Oh, you dip into anger occasionally, sometimes despair, but your set point on your emotional scale is somewhere between overwhelmment, dipping into some anger, and hope. That's where most of you are hanging out. Occasionally you go right into the vortex, but you don't stay there very long. When Esther first began receiving us, she wasn't receiving us in this way. She was receiving us through typing. And she already was a very fast typer. She had won contests at 120 words a minute. So she was really good on the keyboard. And so when we began flowing through her, she could keep up with us pretty well. And then one day she said, it was before computers. It was in the days of the IBM Selectric typewriter. And Esther said, Abraham, I think I'm going to get a word processor. And do you think it's a good idea? And we said, stay with what you have, because the physical, kinesthetic sense of well-being that you have is important before this in the vortex stuff starts flowing through you. So in the same way that you want a DVD 1 and a DVD 2, where you're wanting to teach the mechanics of pitching, you're wanting to teach getting your body into shape, you're wanting, in other words, there is this physical part of everything that when that physical part is in place, there's an enhancement to your belief that makes you then more expectant of being able to deliver the dreams that you have identified.
Okay.
So what we're really getting at here with all of this is that, and what this gathering has really been about in a way that no other gathering has been as clearly, is that yes, you are vibrational beings first and foremost. But yes, you are here in this physical body with enormous reason. And yes, in this physical body, you are causing an expansion of the whole of that which you are. And in the blending of the non-physical you and the physical you, in the blending of the emotional you and the physical you, there is a satisfaction in life that cannot be achieved by being only non-physical or by being only physical. In other words, an intertwining of all that we all are is necessary for the joyful experience that you've come forth to live.
Okay.
And so what we really want to say to you in a way that we think you can hear it now more clearly than ever before is all of these processes that we offer were for the sake of sort of training your ability to focus. In other words, to show you that you have the ability of complaining or praising, that you have the ability of leaning negative or leaning positive, that you have options and you've shown yourself that you have those options. But now, the emphasis that we are really encouraging to you, and we spoke about this earlier, is use any excuse in the world that you can to get in the vortex. Don't stand outside the vortex with your issue, determined that you're going to fix this issue so that you can get in the vortex. Instead, use anything, and you have endless things. That's what the dolphins are about for you. They're showing you, look, you're in the vortex. Look, you're in the vortex. Look, we're in the vortex. Look, this is the vortex. Look, this is the vortex. Use anything and everything that you can to get into the vortex. And then everything else will take care of itself.
Okay.
If you let your undivided attention and your dominant intention, the thing that matters more to you than all other things put together, to get in the vortex, to consistently get into the vortex and to milk it when you're there.
Okay.
If you let being in the vortex be what matters most, all of those problems that have produced all of these solutions will appear to you, in other words. And it takes the trying out of it, because you don't have to try to get in the vortex when you swim with those dolphins.
No way.
There's no effort there. You're just in the vortex. But there's something in this physical world that says because it's easy, or even more, because it's joyful, you must not be paying enough price. You're supposed to suffer. You should get on that pitching mound and pitch until your arm aches. You should get on that focus wheel that Abraham has offered and practice it until your mind is numb. In other words, you should do all of these exercises. You should suffer your way into the vortex, is what humans want to say. And we say, nah, just get in the vortex. Use the easiest thing in the world that you can to do to get in there. Focus, think it, do it, drink it, whatever it is, get in the vortex. Get in the vortex, get in the vortex. And as you consistently do it, it is our promise to you that the universe will deliver to you the path to all the dreams that you have dreamed.